Welcome to the Bourbon Husband Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Bradley Jr. Welcome to the third episode. Welcome to the third pour. Well, as you can see here, we got a very unique, very known bottle of bourbon that we're going to get into. I cannot wait to have this pour. First and foremost, I want to thank all of my followers, subscribers, people who's been liking, sharing, getting the word out, guys. I want to continue to get it out there. I want this thing to elevate to a new level, working every day, every week to get better and better and better. But first and foremost, just wanted to thank you guys for the support so far. It has been huge and I cannot thank you enough. Well, today we're getting into probably the most common bottle of bourbon out there, okay? There's a lot of history behind Blanton's, and in fact, Blanton's revolutionized the bourbon industry. We'll get to that in a moment too. But for those who are not into bourbon, who are not bourbon connoisseurs, who are not passionate about bourbon, they know what this is. You see this, you know exactly what you're looking at. You know, anytime I tell somebody I'm into bourbon, one of the first things they say, oh, you've had a bottle of Blanton. So they know exactly what I'm talking about. So we're going to go ahead and break the seal. But before I go too much further, today is a very special day for me. It is a milestone, a huge accomplishment. And you could probably look here and tell why, but if you cannot, we're going to get to it in a moment, and I'll let you know why today's such a special day. It takes people years to reach this accomplishment, to reach this milestone, and it's been many, many years, many connections, many favors, a lot of money spent, a lot of bourbon hunting, and a little bit of overspending too, as I mentioned. So there's just been a lot that's went into reaching this accomplishment on my journey of bourbon. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get into this pour. Now I'll tell you why I've got a smaller bottle here. This is Blanton single barrel, okay? And I'll let you know why in a moment. I've got the smaller bottle. But for those who don't know about Blanton's, as I mentioned right here a moment ago, the Blanton's name is historic across the bourbon world. Blanton's, I believe, is the reason I'm sitting here with you today. I believe it's what put bourbon on the map and really changed the culture of not just bourbon, but all American spirits out there. It truly changed the whiskey game forever. So, here we go. A decent little pop, nothing too crazy. Let that sit, aerate for a minute. So this is, like I mentioned, Blanton single barrel. For those who are bourbon connoisseurs, obviously, you know what we're having here. You know what that goes into it. And I'll be transparent about this. So there's a lot of bourbon connoisseurs out here that have very mixed reviews. I've never heard anyone really bash Blanton's, but there's a lot of hype. So Blanton's is one of the hardest bottles on the market to get. It's not readily available. So with that being said, you have to wait on allocations, you have to get connections, and if you do find it, you're not going to typically find it for MSRP, which is around $65 to $70. Typically, you're going to get it on the secondary market, and you're going to pay up for it. It is what it is. It's part of the culture, which is a little bit surprising. You know, although I'm sitting here hyping up the history of Blanton's and how it revolutionized the bourbon culture and bourbon in a whole, up until about 2000 to 2021, Blanton's was not as hard to get as it is right now. But then we had the bourbon boom, especially during COVID, and it just, because of what it is, because what goes into it and everything else, this is why it's so hard to get. So most people pay up for it on the secondary market. I know I have spent a good amount of money to get it. Very rarely do I find it for around MSRP. Typically, I'll be transparent. I spend 100 to 115 bucks to get a bottle. I'm very blessed. Fortunately, here recently, we had an allocation, and because of that allocation, we're here. We're talking about it, and I've reached this milestone. So let's get into this a little bit. Then I'm going to give you a little backstory on Blanton's and kind of tell you how it came to be and how it changed the whiskey world, bourbon world altogether. So it's got a really good color, not too dark, not too light. It's got that typical caramel, like I said, typical caramel look to it. Very good in color. Up front, you're going to get some citrus. You're going to get some honey, vanilla, a little bit of rye spice and oak on the nose. No real nuttiness or anything like that. Again, this comes out of the Buffalo Trace Distillery. You know what you're going to get. So yeah, absolutely. A lot of vanilla, honey. Not really brown sugar, but there's some sweetness up front to it. And then you got almost like a sweet heat on the finish, and it lingers. It lingers a good amount. Bleeds into the leather. A little bit of oakness there. Charred oak. I would say you get a lot of honey and a little bit of cinnamon and bacon spice on the palate and finish there. So I'll rate it in a little bit. Again, remember the rating system here. We go by barrels, not stars. 2.5 is average. Below that's below average. Above that's above average. And above 4.5 is excellent. So you don't get that a whole lot. We'll see if this passes the test. Like I said, bourbon connoisseurs, bourbon enthusiasts across the world, it's mixed reviews on Blanton Single Barrel. A lot of people say that the hype's just not there for them. It's just because of the name. The bottle is why people's paying a little, double on the secondary market. Then you got your bourbon enthusiasts that say, yeah, this bourbon is that good. It's very well worth the money. So you have to make that decision. If you've never had Blanton's, I suggest you get into bourbon slowly before you get into this and figure out why and find out for yourself why Blanton's is what it is, why there's hype behind it, because it's an extremely good bourbon to me. So again, I've always enjoyed Blanton's. Anytime I can get my hands on a bottle, rather that's an allocation or somebody's got it as a hookup, a connection for me, I find out on the secondary market, I'm going to buy it for sure. I've been fortunate the last couple bottles I found for around MSRP, but before that I was spending 100 to 115, 120 bucks every time I got my hands on a bottle. So you won't find me spending stupid money for it, though. I've heard of it. I've never come across a bottle, but I have heard people charging something crazy like 130, 150, 170 bucks for a bottle. That won't be me. I'm not going to overspend like that, but I have paid up for sure. So yeah, that's just really good bourbon. Like I said, honey, vanilla, cinnamon, bacon spice, little bit of oak there on the finish, a caramel on the finish for sure. It's got a sweet, heady finish to it. Palate's extremely good. You get a lot of citrus, floral, vanilla, caramel, a little bit of bacon spice and oak, maybe a little bit of a rye spice on the nose, as I mentioned. So for me, I rate Blanton's Single Barrel right around a 3.75 to 3.8, so well above average, right? It's on my top shelf. It's one of my favorite bourbons. I don't know if I'd put it in my top 2, 3. I think it's in the top 5. I mean, I've had a lot of good bourbon, but it's up there for me. I believe the hype's there. as I said, I don't believe in the hype being spending $150 for a bottle, but if I got a Benjamin in my wallet and it's available, I'm going to get it. So tell y'all a little bit about Blanton's. And again, Blanton's is truly important. It's paramount to the bourbon world because it truly revolutionized what we know as bourbon today. So there was a World War II veteran named Elmer T. Lee. When he got back from the war, he was looking for work, and this was around the 1940s. Well, he went to this distillery and met with Albert Blanton, okay? And Blanton actually turned him down. He said no. He interviewed him, didn't give him the job, but something happened, and I'm not sure if he re-interviewed, if there was a connection there, but they ended up started working together almost a week and a half later. So Elmer T. Lee worked with him for many years. So Blanton was actually the president of this distillery up until, I believe, 1952. He had passed in 1959. And there's some old stories about him, he would, where he was the president, he had, huge important people, huge guests, friends, family, important people in the business world that he would bring to the distillery. He'd have business meetings with. Well, there's old notes going around, and an old story. Elmer T. Lee had said that he had barrels in Warehouse H that he called honey barrels. And when these people would come in for business meetings or whatever it might have been, or close friends and family, he would have a pour out of these barrels. Just those barrels. They would be poured out of that barrel alone. So, but that was just for really high important people. It was never released to the public. It never came out that way. It was just for his very close circle. So, and as I mentioned, he had passed in 1959, retired in 1952. Well, Elmer T. Lee had became a master distiller there, and he was nearing retirement. And so before he retired, they gave him a project. They gave him a task. He had done some really amazing work. He was an excellent master distiller. And they said, listen, we want to do something different. We want you to find a way to create something unique, flavorful, and something that's never been done before. So he's sitting there and he remembers back to Blanton having his guest over and just having bourbon from those barrels, from those single barrels. So in 1984, the very first people, never before done, revolutionary, he released the very first single barrel. It had never been done. So he got the idea again from him because he done it before, never released it. It was never, nobody knew what it was, right? And this was back in the 1940s, early 1950s. He had just, where he was the president, had people, very important people and friends and family over, and he would just pour out of that single barrel. And he thought back, he said, what can I do different? So to pay homage to him, he said, let me try that. And it revolutionized bourbon forever. So 1984, the very, very first single barrel was released. He ended up calling it Blanton's, and to pay homage to Blanton. So there you go. If you did not know, now you know. 1984, the very first single barrel in bourbon was released by none other than Elmer T. Lee, from the idea and from watching and taking notes of Blanton doing something so radical at the time. Nobody would have ever, especially back in the 1940s, thought to do something like that, right? We just got out of the, you had the Bottled and Bond Act and stuff like that. So, Prohibition, all of this stuff was huge. So to release something like that wouldn't have been thought of. So for Elmer T. Lee to backbone and go back and take something that he just seen somebody picking honey barrels and use it. It's huge. It's why I'm here. It's why we're talking about bourbon. It's what created this phenomenon, right? Bourbon, and it changed the whiskey culture forever. Not just bourbon, but the American spirit, all spirits out there. It truly changed that forever. It revolutionized bourbon and put it on the map. It truly did. To this day, I believe that, not saying it wouldn't have been done later, okay, but who would have thought about it, right? I mean, it would have took, I believe, a much longer time. He just took something he's seen being done from way back when and used it, and here's what we got. So, thank you, Elmer T. Lee. Thank you, Blanton. Because of you, gentlemen, we're here, and we get to sip on some amazing bourbon. And we can share that story and talk about it. You know, as I said on the very first episode, there's a lot of history that goes into bourbon. And this is a part of why I love it, right? Because you get stories like that. So it just changed the game forever. So cheers. That's really good stuff. So yeah, I've always enjoyed Blanton single barrel, top shelf bourbon, right? It's not going to be a bottle that you again, don't go spend $150 on it. But if you got a Benjamin in your wallet, I highly suggest going ahead and moving forward. So, as I mentioned before, you know, there's a lot of people that may not be bourbon connoisseurs or huge into bourbon, but when they see this bottle, they know what it is. Have you ever seen John Wick, House of Cards? Any of those, you know, in that movie, that show, The Hunting Wives, most recently, really good show, had a bottle of Blanton's. It's so renowned. It's so known, right? Blanton's is its own thing. It's in its own atmosphere of bourbon, okay? So a lot of people are going to say, as I mentioned, it's overrated. I don't believe it is. I do think if you're spending $170, $150, you're a little bit out of your mind. So we're going to have more Blantons on here, different kinds and stuff like that. But it started here, man. I mean, Blanton single barrel, it really revolutionized the entire culture of bourbon. So, some of you are probably wondering, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, why in the world do I have a small bottle drinking out of it? So, you know, I've seen these smaller bottles, never was going to pick one up. I've had a multitude of these. So, for those who don't know, as you could see, these are the toppers on these Blanton's bottles. This was always the topper, but in 1999 they decided to do something different to pay homage to Kentucky, which is where it's distilled, where Elmer T. Lee's from, where Blanton's from. They both grew up on farms in Kentucky. They decided to do horse racing. Obviously, you guys know the Kentucky Derby. Horse racing's a big part of the culture there in Kentucky. Well, in 1999, Buffalo Trace decided to do something different. So they wanted to, I don't know to say make it a game, but they wanted to make this journey of chasing bourbon and add a level to it. So they decided to have different racing horses starting the race, finishing the race, and it would spell out Blanton's. Now, Blantons. I'll tell you why this is a little difficult in a minute. Obviously, it's a game of chance, right? It's almost like the McDonald's Monopoly games, if y'all remember that. So, you know, it's not easy to get the entire set and spell out Blanton's. In fact, if you complete the set, you can actually send it off to a Buffalo Trace distillery, and they'll send a slab back with Blanton's on the front and all of them on there that spells out Blanton's. So this has taken many, many years. A lot of people sometimes will never reach this accomplishment, this milestone, because as I mentioned, it's not easy to get. It's hard to get your hands on Blanton's. On top of that, if you get it on the secondary market, it's not the cheapest thing to buy. So, you're sitting there trying to find all these letters. I'm not going to lie, it's taken some really strong connections and some good opportunities and a game of luck at the right time, right place, right people to get me here. I've bought the bottles though, right? I've never been handed a bottle of Blanton's in my life, other than one, which was a wedding present from none other than Chris Bivens, but that was straight from the barrel. So we'll get into that bottle another time. So obviously you see here, I've got all but one letter. And as I mentioned, it has taken people years. Sometimes they never reach this milestone of completing the set of all the toppers that spell out Blanton's. So the N, it's got two N's in it. The N's are not the same. Okay, you've got one just regular N, and then on the end here, you got a semicolon, right? And I found, I'd say I probably got 3 or 4 more N's up there. I could not find this one. So I get a call from my buddy, Kevin Shrewsbury. He's at our local Virginia ABC store. We just got an allocation in down there. So they have Blanton's, Eagle Rare, all this stuff, John J. Bowman Single Barrel, all kinds of stuff. Which, by the way, pause, John J. Bowman Single Barrel, I believe we're going to sit down blind taste it. We'll break it before we do. We'll break it open, have a pour of it. But John J. Bowman Single Barrel is probably the closest thing to this that I've found as far as the single barrels are concerned. You may be surprised. So anyway, he called me up. We got an allocation. So I sent my wife, her mom out there, my mother-in-law, to get some Eagle Rare and some Blanton's, right? I think I picked up 2 bottles of Eagle Rare and this bottle of Blanton's. Next day, and I'm not thinking, right? I know I'm after this whole set, and I'm thinking I got 2 letters to go. Well, I get home that night, I pull out my toppers, and I'm like, holy crap, I'm one away. I look at this one, and I believe this one was an O, and I've got plenty of O's. I was like, man, I need one more N, but it's got to be the right N. So the following day, Chris goes to the ABC store, and I'm like, dude, please tell me they got the N with the semicolon, because if so, I'm going to run. I'm going to leave work right now. I'm jetting right over there. And he let me know. He said, hey, they do, just in the smaller bottle. I said, don't care, because that's the same thing, same topper, right? That's no difference. It's just a smaller bottle. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I go there. On the way there, I call him. I said, hey, did you push that one to the back? Because, preface this, when you have an allocation, you can only get one bottle. You can't, even if they're 2 different bottles, you cannot get more than one allocated bottle at a time for a day. So he couldn't. He had nobody with him. He was stuck. So he had picked him up a bottle of Blanton's, and I was like, man, I asked him, I said, did you have that for me? He said, no. I get there, don't see it anywhere, right? And I'm like, I'm discouraged. I'm like, well, I might as well pick up a bottle. So I go to get a normal size bottle of Blanton's, and then I happen to, out of the corner of my eye, I seen a smaller bottle pushed all the way in the back of something else. I can't even remember what was there, but it wasn't where the Blanton's was. So I look back, and lo and behold, it's the N with the semicolon. It was a small bottle. I was jumping for joy. I could not believe it. Finally, I have completed the set. I asked Chris again. I said, are you sure you didn't have that for me? He said, I swear to you, dude, I didn't. I said, well, dang, you should have said you did. But so, ladies and gentlemen, my followers out there, this is it, right? I mean, I cannot believe we've gotten to this point. but this is long awaited. Many years of bourbon hunting, many years of spending, paying secondary market money, many years of connections and favors being pulled has went into this to complete the set, the entire set. We're here. I'm floored that this opportunity's even gotten to me. It's just amazing. And some of you may think it's nothing special, or you don't understand why I'm so excited for it, but I'm a bourbon lover, and Blanton Single Barrel is a big part of that, right? And just the chase, the bourbon hunting, finding good bottles, collecting these bottles. Well, Buffalo Trace, Blanton's, they made it fun, right? They did something different, and here we are. They made it unique, and they made you want to go harder, and it just added to the aura of what Blanton's is, right? It's just something else that elevated the brand when they decided to do it in 1999 and make it a collector's set. So there's many bourbon connoisseurs go their whole lives without collecting the whole set. Now, I'm not talking about going down to your local ABC store or local liquor place, and they have all the toppers in there, and you buying the toppers to get the whole set. No. That's not what I'm talking about. To me, that takes the fun out of it. I truly don't understand why people even do that. There's the joy of, hey, it's taken me, this has been a 4.5 year journey to get to this point. So I could not imagine cheating the system and going and just finding the toppers and having it that way. It wouldn't mean nothing to me. This means everything. That these years of, like I said, secondary market money and stuff like that's went into it. It's made it fun. It's the chase after the set. But trust me, I'm still going to be chasing Blantons anytime I can get my hands on it. I'm going to spend the money and get it. So, guys, I cannot tell you enough how huge this is to me to have completed the entire set. But guys, again, this is an amazing glass, an amazing pour. I highly recommend Blanton Single Barrel. And to those of you just getting started on your bourbon journey, right? If you're new to this, heck, I said earlier, getting to slow your way into it. The reason I say that, so you can appreciate this, what Blanton's is, what it means to the bourbon world. But if you tasted this, you're going to understand why up front, why it's so popular and people chase after it, right? So that's really good stuff. So, guys, again, this has been a really exciting journey. Many years, right? 4.5 years have went into this. There's a lot of history behind Blanton's. There's a lot of history behind all bourbon, but without Blanton's, without Elmer T. Lee taking the leap and doing something bold and taking an idea that was never even put on paper. He just watched it, right, happen. He just watched a man who had, it goes back to what me and Chris was saying, have friends and family over and important business associates. He sat down, he had a pour with them, enjoyed himself, had important business decisions made, had his close circle there with him, and he just called them his honey barrels, right? He said, hey, let me pour you, let's have a pour out of this barrel. I think it's really delicious. This is one of my honey barrels. This is something I'm going to put to the side for special occasions. Who knew that almost 40 years later, a little over 40 years later, that it would be an idea that was so radical, nobody thought to do it, an idea that became a plan, was executed, and it created bourbon history. It revolutionized the game forever. So, again, cheers to Elmer T. Lee, Blanton, because without those moves, who knows? Who in the world knows where we would be at with bourbon today? Would it be what it is? I want your thoughts. I want your opinions. I want questions, comments. Tell me, however you're watching this, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it may be, however you're watching, let me know what you think would have happened. So, and if you've had Blanton single barrel, and especially my bourbon connoisseurs out there, tell me your honest opinion. Give me your rating. Is it overrated? Do you think it's rated properly? Underrated? I've never really heard anybody say underrated, but tell me what you truly think. But this has been awesome, and I'll tell you this, it's kind of surreal and meant to be. It's kind of funny that, you know, it took me all these years to complete the set, and it didn't happen until we started this journey together here on the Bourbon Husband podcast. It's wild that it took me this long, but the moment I started the Bourbon Husband podcast, this happens. So that tells me I meant to enjoy this with you all. I meant to share this with you all, and I hope you feel the same way. Please continue to subscribe, follow, like, share, everything you possibly can. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Bourbon Husband Podcast, my Facebook page. We're going to be getting on more platforms here soon. I want to make this thing big. I want to elevate it again to the very next level and continue to grow day by day, week by week. So I'm hoping you guys help me get there. Hopefully you've enjoyed these episodes. Hopefully you've enjoyed the journey up to this point. Again, we're going to have some huge guests on the show. I've already got a couple of dates scheduled for some big names, so hold into your seat, hold tight. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be a fun journey. But for now, y'all have a good night. Thank you so much, and I'm glad you could join me here on the Bourbon Husband Podcast. By the way, let's not forget, cheers.